Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, and this is the EVE Universe Show's continued coverage of the CSM 17, this time with Scott Renton, more popularly known as Nth Dimensional. How's it going, Nth?
It's going great. How are you?
I'm doing good. Getting through these interviews, cooking through them, learning a lot about candidates, interested about learning about you. So...
Yep, only 45 of them to go through.
I don't think I'm going to get to them all. So, but, we'll see. So, I mean, a lot of people know of you. Like, you have a very popular stream. You're a partner, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But maybe people don't know very much about you, the real Scott Renton, right? So
Yeah.
why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are before you came into the Nth Dimensional world?
Okay. So, Scott Renton was created in 2009. Technically, I was playing a little before that on some other character, but I've forgotten about them. So I started playing in 2009. I did some high sec mining, I think, and eventually got bored of that. And then I stopped playing for a number of years, and I got back into it. And then I was like, okay, let's do something else. And I think I did Lowsec Faction Warfare at that point. And then I got a little bit bored of that, and so I stopped. And then I got back into EVE. The pretty typical cycle of playing EVE multiple times throughout a number of times, and then eventually something hooks you. It gets the dirty little claws into you. And then you're like, I love EVE forever, and now I'm a big proponent and believer of EVE forever.
Well, what hooked you? What finally nabbed you?
I think what finally did it was getting to really get involved and understand kind of the logistics, the traveling, the exploration parts of New Eden, how it all started to connect and make sense. Previously, I would be like, okay, I guess I'm going from Jita to Amar, which the route sends me to these places called Rens and Heck, and I'm like, okay, that's weird, but whatever. I guess these are trade hubs. But now, I kind of have a deeper understanding of why Rens, why Heck,
right?
Why Dodixie, and what the connection to Abyssus does, and so that all really intrigues me, as well as just kind of flying around, learning new things, and just also PvP. EVE is, in my opinion, the second deepest PvP game, and it's incredibly hard to the skill floor is incredibly high, the skill ceiling is insurmountably high.
Not sure if anybody's found it yet.
Definitely not. I can guarantee you that no one is close.
You can't just skip over that. What's the first?
Oh, Pokemon.
Okay.
Trust me.
No. I understand.
So good.
Yep. No, I get it. I'm not going to say you're right or wrong.
Once you get into it, there's IVs, there's EVs, there's movesets, there's duels.
But
oh man,
I think that that's a really salient point about EVE Online, though, because the problem with the depth of EVE Online isn't that it doesn't have the depth, but if you're not aware of how to understand it, it doesn't look like it has it. Just like the lore, right? It's too easy to say, oh well, the lore doesn't matter, but literally as soon as you open up that box, you're like, oh my god, it's a black hole of everything.
It's incredibly hard to pierce into, but once you do, you can really enjoy it for a very long time.
Right. So, why are you running for the CSM?
To put another notch in my belt.
Nice. Nice.
No, but
achievement unlocked.
To one part,
politician.
Yes, but I do want to say, being the number one pilot on that mining monument gate was another notch in my belt. But I was incredibly dedicated to it, and I did it well. I think that I would be a great CSM candidate because I have a great knowledge base, and I think that CCP could really use my knowledge and skill sets to make a better game for everyone. Like at the end of the day, I make YouTube videos to make the game better and more enjoyable for everyone, given the content we have. So like that's the end goal, to make Eve more accessible and more fun for more people. And I think I can do that by being on a more advisory position to CCP.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good answer. A little bit of background for the everybody but the 4 people that know what the hell you were talking about. Nth Dimensional actually joined Aderon Robotics, my group, during the Stargate Trailblazer event, and helped us build the Kenrick Stargate. So and got first place in it. So you busted your ass. Like we had, we were competing with other people that were honestly like really making a go for it, and our own internal competition. Yeah, in Lowsec. So like it wasn't nothing, and you basically dedicated that entire time to just mining, right?
Yep. Yeah, something that, and I generally don't do. I'm not a huge miner. But I was like, I want Scott Renton to be forever immortalized on this gosh dang monument, and I'm going to do it.
Yep. So if you're traveling through Lowsec to Solitude, you'll pass by Scott's handiwork. Okay, so when did you decide to join to run for the CSM? That actually is a good question. Like before FanFest or after?
3 months ago.
Oh, before
FanFest. Okay.
So, what do you think about what was announced at FanFest?
I think everything that was announced at FanFest was great, and nothing that was announced was bad, i.e. like Diablo Immortal. My only main concern is that nothing was actually put in to, like, there's no actual new content still, and we are now in the higher subscription times.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I like to say that they failed to capture people's imagination, right? If you're not going to deliver it, like, you need to be able to believe in what they're doing, at least somewhat.
I think it was a very poor time for them to come out with like surprise content. So there's the arcs, which for obvious reasons we don't want to know everything involved with them. That makes sense. But it wasn't the right time to deliver that sort of content. We needed something, all of the information up front with specific times and dates that we can expect it, and that we just weren't given any of that. We were giving vague promises of eventually things will come.
Right. But I agree. I've said many times that I think that the arc system would be good, but they should have made the first arc climax at FanFest, so that way they could point back to what's been going on with the arc for the last several months or whatever, and be like, see,
like,
look,
if an arc was going on, and then at FanFest they were like, this, like, something completed the arc in game, and it's like, boom, now we have a new ship or a new faction.
Right, and then they could point back to all of the things that have happened and how they related to it.
And say, like, you liked this, we're doing more of this.
Right, and help people understand, because right now I don't think people... There's a lot of unknowns, right? We don't know how long arcs are going to be. We don't know what kind of things are going to come out of it. We don't know how much we're going to have influence over it. So, like, people are just left to their imaginations with no answers.
We had the end of the event at the end of FanFest, and then we've had fuck all since then. And I don't expect we will have anything for, I don't know, a while.
So what
the next thing's going to be the Grand Prix, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the next thing that they've been adding things in, is like the Federation Day stuff.
Right. So maybe that will continue the arc. It's just we don't know, and that's the problem.
Yeah, and oddly enough, we also haven't seen anything like added that, like with the previous 2 events, they added new things that led me detect the fact that like something more is happening, than before, like with the Hunter, with Guardian Gala. This time, I haven't really seen that much in that regard. So it is pretty much a mystery. Who knows? But what do you think is the thing out of the FanFest announcements, or what we know is coming, or whatever you want to call it, that you're most excited for? And what are you most worried about?
Probably Fashion Souls is what I'm most excited about, because I have a passion for fashion,
Glamour
and
is
I
the
want
true
my
endgame of EVE
character.
Online.
That's correct. I want my character to look good. I want my ship to look good. I have a feeling they're gonna fuck it up, but we'll see. That's what I'm probably most excited about. Is just like if someone sees me roll up in like a decked out crewer, and they're like, "Oh shit, this motherfucker coming into my faction warfare," then like I don't know. I think that's really fun and enjoyable.
What do you think about their decision to use that as a way to incentivize people doing things in EVE Online rather than as a new monetization path? Like they could have sold it for money, but instead they're
Right.
explicitly making it so you have to earn it through doing things.
I think as long as the execution is good, I think it's very. I think it will be good. Which is part of the reason I want to be on CSM is to help be a sounding board for like what makes sense to monetize and what makes sense to not monetize. And like I come from a very like business focused ideology. Like I do believe video games should make money. I do believe that in general a $60 video game in this day and age is way underpriced. But also like at the same time we do need to deliver like content that you can you have to do in game. And so I think that like if you see someone that has I don't know like a rainbow skin, that means that they have actually killed 1,000 capsules or something.
Right.
Like I think that is important because it gives people a reason to play the game as opposed to a reason to like quite literally I've gone out and made USD to turn into like Plex so I can just like throw away some ships on some stuff, right? Like it is easier for me to go farm USD than it is for me to go farm ISK.
Right. Which is, I mean, if you think about it, is true for most video games that have some sort of conversion process and by
Right.
necessity, right? Like if it was worth
Right.
more, your time was worth more playing the game than working a minimum wage job, then
But if there is
why
something
would you
that I
give them
can
money?
do only in the game,
Right.
then that gives me reason to actually play the game.
That's fair. What would you say to somebody that argues that you, as a big content streamer, already have a pretty loud voice and don't need to be on the CSM?
I mean, I would say that they're decently correct. Like at
So
the end
then,
of the day, I have a personal connection to people like Swift and some other of the CCP developers. So like if I need to ever talk to them, like I can. But at the same time, being on the CSM does have additional knowledges, NDAs, and more sounding board opportunities.
have you found that not being on the CSM be restrictive to your ability to give feedback or anything?
It's one of those like unknown situations. Like, would it be possible to give feedback or information on various events, mechanics, decisions before? Probably. You put me in a difficult situation
That's my
because,
job.
like, right? Yeah, on one hand, I want to be honest and be like, yeah, like, realistically, there's probably not a whole lot being on CSM will do that's different than what I already have being an Eve partner, being having great access to CCP. But on the other hand, most all of the CSM candidates are in a very similar situation. Like, if you're telling me like Brisk Ruleball doesn't have good connections to CCP, or like even like Dutch Gunner, like I know that Dutch Gunner could easily just walk up to any of the CCP guys and be like, "Hey, what talkie."
That's a fair point.
Like most all of the CSM candidates already have a position where they're already in pretty regular contact with CCP.
I, certainly, it might be pretty safe to argue that anybody who has enough clout to get elected would certainly also be well enough known to be, in contact with
Right.
CCP if their opinion is
Even
is
further, I would say if
rewarded.
someone doesn't have any contact with CCP or doesn't have any access to them, and they are running for the CSM, why is that?
Yeah, it is. It does make me it does make me chuckle sometimes when people talk about how CCP needs to like talk to people outside of the CSM. I'm like, you might want to ask yourself why you're not being contacted, right? Like, because they totally do, absolutely.
Right.
So one of the things that you're known for outside of your stream itself is you also have made a YouTube channel where you have a lot of like tutorial videos and stuff like that. What
Yep.
lessons have you learned in that by doing that, by having that, by making those tutorials?
How to edit videos,
Have you learned anything about like
which is incredibly difficult.
that's fair, but I mean like about EVE Online? Like, have you learned anything about what people do and don't know, or have you figured out any
Yeah.
like false assumptions? What kind of things have you learned in this journey?
So what's interesting is that my first videos were how to do the sleeper caches, so the superior, standard, and limited. And to date, those are still some of the most popular videos, despite having terrible production quality. And so,
worst,
like, I
isn't it?
was right. Like, I was like, people need to know this information, and there's not great information already out there. So I made it. And it's great. People seem to quite enjoy it still. So there's that. And then also, I would say generally, when I make a video, people enjoy the information. I like, not to toot my own horn, but I feel like I've done pretty well in this regard. In that, like, when I make a video, generally, it's something that people are looking for. It's something that people don't already have access to. One such thing is that I was unable to make a video for the last event due to going to Iceland and whatnot for Fanfest.
Yes.
And when I came back and I was like, okay, I want to do this little event. Let's go find a video of someone who has told me the information of what I normally do. And I couldn't find any. And I was pissed off. And I'm like,
I feel
no one
personally
took up
attacked.
the mantle.
No.
Yeah,
I will-
as you should.
I will say, like, I do really appreciate, like, you do make really good videos, and it has been nice to be like, well, rather than having to like make a whole exploration tutorial myself, I can just be like, go check out Nth stuff, like. So
Right.
I feel like we've worked in tandem with each other in a certain way.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's good.
Yeah. So how do you feel like CCP's been doing recently? What do you think about the changes that they've made since scarcity?
So it's a weird question because again, on one hand, I believe that New Eden and Eve is in the best place it has ever been in. There is the most content, there is the most balance. There is a fair bit of wealth distribution issues, which scarcity was supposed to help correct, and it did not. I would say that pretty much everyone agrees scarcity just didn't work as intended. But there's also so much room for improvement. And because Eve is such a large game with a relatively small development team, it's hard to solve all the problems in a timely fashion. And sometimes that means faction warfare doesn't get touched for like a decade.
Right. Yeah. That's. Anywho, but like, I mean, we have market changes, we have industry changes, we have mining changes, we have, there's been a lot of really controversial changes in the last couple of years. But in a lot of ways, they're building. On the one hand, they're adding in a bunch of bullshit that are making the people that were doing those things unhappy. On the other hand, they are taking systems that may not have had enough nuance and adding a little bit more texture to them to introduce more interesting choices in that regard.
Yeah.
Do you
I
feel like
think
that process has been successful, or what could they have done better?
Yeah, so on the whole, on the general, I feel that all of the larger changes in like industry and whatnot is a positive thing for New Eden. Obviously, it ruffled a whole lot of feathers, and obviously things have to change a lot. But I feel like distribution of materials is better, such as not being able to get all of your minerals out of like R64 moons or nullsec or whatnot. So I feel like all of those changes are in the long term better for the world of New Eden, and I feel like in the path and pursuit of Eve Forever, it is good, despite it being bad for the current player count and the current like the old creator, old users, and industry and people and whatnot.
Right. So you given yourself a 5 in exploration, a 4 in PvP, a 4 in New Eden, and a 2 in game industry. What does a 4 in New Eden mean?
A 4 in New Eden means that I know how New Eden itself, the universe, functions. I know what drifter holes do and how they operate. I know the various connections between like the low sex, the null sex, the high sex. I know the how the factions and rats and things of that nature work, where you might find various gas clouds. So a good example is that did you know that the Cytosaran gas clouds all have specific nullsec constellations where you find them? And did you know that
Yeah.
those sites have always a static? I can't remember the exact names of the sites, but there's always a static like two like shitty site, and then like one. I can't remember exactly right now, but basically, if you were looking to find specific cytosarin gas in nullsec, you would want to go to these specific areas. And so just kind of knowing things like that, knowing like why people might settle in various things.
Right. A lot of people don't realize, like, they'll even move between different areas in nullsec, and it to them the only difference is like, what do I tank my ratting ship with, right? What damage types do I do? But there is a
Right.
lot of nuance
But
to people
like,
that if once you understand it.
yeah, knowing that like if you're looking for intact armor plates, you would want to go to Sancho relics.
Right.
Or if you're looking for I beams, you want to go to Garistas.
So
And also knowing where those places are.
who whose positions, whose opinions, whose play styles do you seek to represent?
I seek to represent the play styles of the everyman. But I mean, in more general, like yeah, people who are just playing the game don't necessarily like want to be a F1 line member. Someone who wants to explore and learn more about New Eden, and isn't necessarily beholden to large blocks, whether they be in null sec, low sec, or even high sec.
What do you think that CCP can or should do to make exploration more rewarding? That isn't like, by exploration, I don't mean hacking cans, but I mean like going around and seeing the different places and learning about the different places and all that kind of stuff. Do you feel like CCP should make that more rewarding, and how?
I feel like you should get some IBUS credits for every new system you visit.
Oh, okay. For every system that you visit.
And perhaps a specific skin or decal or something for exploring new places.
What about, would you advocate for achievements?
Yeah,
Like going to see BTAC-R, for example.
yeah. I think you should get a little, maybe not the BTAC-R skin, but like get a little BTAC-R decal or something
So you think that you should
if you
get
go visit there.
rewards and, or you should get not only the achievement but also cosmetic rewards?
I personally feel yes, you should get something besides the achievement because I'm not that kind. I'm not like an achievement hunter player. I
Right.
know some people are, and that would actually probably be fine for a lot of people. But me personally, I would like to see something attached to achieving that achievement, aside from number go up.
So there's a lot of things in the game that are possible that a lot of people just aren't made aware of. Everything from the black glass hunt to drifter wormholes, like you were talking about.
Yep.
Do you feel like CCP should better signpost those things, or do you think that it's a good thing that these are like hidden things to discover?
I feel like there is a issue with forgetting about old content. So obvious signs point to Cosmos missions
Yeah.
and things like the Black Glass journey. So like when they are introduced, people obviously like there's things that would indicate to go do this thing and learn more about it. But now that such a long time has passed, like you basically never need to know about it unless you are actively like, I wonder where like the black glass comes from, which, is actually a question I had, and that's how I figured out about it. And I've done some of the Cosmos missions, and I will never do them again.
Oh no.
I hope that I'm surprised they haven't removed them from the game, because they are so bad, and they are not signposted at all, and they are
I don't
so
think that's a
different
coincidence.
from like everything else.
Yeah. I wonder if they
So I do think there's an
can
issue
remove.
with that. Probably passcode.
Yeah, exactly. Um, what do you think about the new faction warfare changes, the allegiance system, and the arc system, like the concept of it?
I Faction warfare obviously needs a huge reworking change, and from what we've seen, it all looks great. And so hopefully we can be delivered on various mechanics and systems that are actually fun and engaging. That's up to to game developers doing a good job. The allegiance thing is probably going to be huge for me because I am a person who would like to declare my allegiance to the Galente Federation, and I would like to fight for that side whenever I'm doing faction warfare. But currently, I have two options. I go in faction warfare, and I go into plexes just to, PvP kill ships explicitly, or I would join a corporation like Aderon Robotics, and then do faction warfare at the expense of having easy access to like my Wormhole Corp, or
Right.
doing other things and various standings list.
Would you consider
So like
yourself a wormhole candidate?
I would consider myself a Wormhole can. Yes, I would.
All right. Well,
I do not think I am the best Wormhole candidate, and I do not think Wormhole Block should vote for me for being a Wormhole candidate. We have, what's his name? The guy from Turbo Feeder Glory. I believe he's the Wormhole candidate that we support.
oh, don't make me think of everybody's name right now off the top of my
Think of
head.
his name.
Mark. Yeah, Mark Resurrectus.
Yeah, Mark Resurrect. So I think if you were voting for a Wormhole candidate, you should vote for Mark Resurrectus.
Okay. How do you feel about the
But
medium
that
structure
said,
changes?
I would say I am a Wormhole candidate.
What do you think about the medium structure changes?
I think that they are overblown in how scary they are. That said, I was hanging around with Eminent Stream, and so he likes to keep a track of things like that. And he seems to think that like a lot of medium structures and wormholes, have been exploded. An an abnormal amount. I don't know if that's just because like people are like, oh, medium structures are easier to kill now, so let's go kill them, or if like
Yeah, is it
they're
the new
actually
hotness?
easier to kill. Like I don't know if it's just like this spurred this kind of
Right.
content, or if it is actually much easier.
Well, even if it is much easier, the question is, will this tone down? Right? Will it no longer be the thing to do?
Yeah, I don't think it's as huge as people are making it out to be.
Fair enough. Well, then, what is the biggest problem that plagues wormhole space right now?
Nighthawks? Probably the lack of ships and the easeability of safety.
What do you mean by the lack
So,
of ships?
so like if you go into a wormhole, like any particular wormhole, especially like higher class wormholes, it's very unlikely that you're actually going to find anyone. Like in terms of safety, I feel probably most safe in wormholes, and then probably like null sec, high sec, low sec. Because like if you go to a C6, you're probably not going to run into anyone unless there's like an active group, and generally there's not.
Hmm.
And it's also very easy to actually like become safe in a wormhole that you're looking to farm. Like you can roll off all the holes, you can have a few scouts in various particular locations, and as long as you're paying attention, you can almost never actually get killed.
So CCP has been putting in a lot of effort into the MPE. We got the first stage, which was like the combat stage, and we got the mining phase. And as of recording, just today, the next step, which would be the career agent replacement, got hit singularity. We haven't gotten a chance to check that out yet. But what do you feel is one thing that CCP generally has not taught in the MPE that they should or need to?
I don't think they've taught the areas of space
Like the difference
and
between
what.
low sec, null sec, and wormhole space?
Right. Yeah. So I think they're very focused on simple mechanics and not the kinds of content that you can get in various areas of space. They don't really teach at all about Concord mechanics as well. So, like, if you die, you might not have any idea why, or
Right.
why Concord didn't help you if you go to Lowsec, or why those gate guns shot you.
Well, I mean, there's pop-up boxes both when you like are proceeding with a dangerous act or jumping into low sec, right?
Yeah, but, who reads?
Fair enough. And that is actually one of the biggest problems with the MPE, as it was at least, was that.
Oh, also the fucking Triglavians. Oh, good lord. I hate them. In, like, especially for new bros, like, if you don't know what you're doing and haven't interacted enough with trigs and you like to do distribution missions or like to do hauling, you're going to get fucked by trigs sooner or later, and you're going to not know why, and you're going to not know how to fix it.
I thought Triggs no longer went to gates.
I think in specific areas they no longer go to gates.
Oh yeah, you're right. I think that they'll probably do it in minor victory systems. It's just when the Rasnaborg don't.
Right.
But they'll guard their systems and they'll react to the war posts being attacked. Yeah.
Yeah, so if I'm elected for CSM, I promise to change so that all new characters have positive zero point zero 0.01 standings with Triggs and Edencom to start. And you have to make a choice to make one evil. Because Triggs aren't evil, but the game says they are.
So what's the difference between a challenge and a barrier to entry?
A challenge is optional, whereas a barrier to entry is non-optional.
Fair enough. I mean, I'm just saying, like, in in this case, I would say there's a way around it. If they die, it's because they didn't know something. It's a way to learn it. So, wouldn't we take away something from them
But
by having that lesson not in the game?
so the fact that the main slash only path to knowing something is to get fucked by it at least once, in my opinion, is a feels bad moment that I would like to avoid. Like if you were given like a career mission agent or something that talked about like the Triclavians, and they were like, there's this group of individuals, like you could and some way to possibly side with them before you get killed.
Right. Um, Dark Souls kind of taught this philosophy though, that like learning by by realizing that you did the wrong thing by being killed is like a way that you can do this, and it makes a hardcore game. Why are people
But
interested in learning in that methodology in Dark Souls but not in EVE Online?
so this may shock you that I'm going to say this, but Eve shouldn't necessarily be a hardcore game when you're getting into it.
Okay.
You can do hardcore things, but Eve has a lot of options to be very relaxing and chill. If you just want to be a miner, if you just want to do high sec distribution missions. And I don't think you should necessarily be forced into this challenge if you don't want to.
Well, what would you say to the people that suggest that that spurs on growth? Right? Like, in my opinion, or like from what I've seen, most people don't leave the game, actually leave the game because of some, like the NPCs blowing them up. They leave because nothing happened, that they're bored, that there's no direction. They don't, at least if they get blown up, they've got something to be mad at.
I think there are certainly people who lose a large value. Either just like they move on to a different game or whatnot, instead of re-getting that ISK.
So how far would you?
I don't know the exact numbers, but I feel like that's a fair thing to say.
How far would you advocate for, and how would you do it where new players have protections while not necessarily being abusable by more experienced players? Like, is this something that like we should design something that is just valuable, like okay for new players to do, but experienced players don't necessarily value? Or should we like do a hard thing where like if you've never had your safety to yellow, you've never been to Lowsec, people can't shoot you? Like what? How where do you want to go in this scale of like making sure that there's a comfortable space for new players to discover the game?
So I think the career mission agents should teach a lot and be fairly expanded. I think that things such as like having trigs start as neutrals, not reds. It is certainly going to be a bit of a challenge to design systems which are friendly to new bros but not exploitable by veterans, such as like a lot of people have alpha praxises to do high sec defense.
Mm-hmm. So you'd rather have systems that apply to everybody, but new players will maybe engage with, but experienced players won't, rather than having some sort of like hard, for the first 28 days you can't be attacked or whatever.
Yeah, I don't like any hard things like that.
Yeah.
Especially because so like some people, it's not about like 28 days or any amount of days. It's some people want to play Dark Souls and some people want to play Stardew Valley. And I think Eve should have a place for both of those kinds of players.
Fair enough. So do you believe in non-consensual PvP?
I believe it's all consensual.
Fair. Do you believe in non-consensual PvE?
Um, I don't know if that's a thing.
Well, so
because
like
non-consensual PvE would be PvP.
Well,
don't
no.
You think? I guess. What do you mean?
What was this? That phrase got used a lot during the Drifter attacks, right? Where now we have to deal with this PvE threat. There are people that advocate that PvE should sit in its own corner. That when I want to engage with PvE, I should be able to. but when I'm doing PvP or whatever, PvE should just stay the hell away from it. Do you agree with that, or do you feel like there should be a mixture of both and both?
I feel like you should always have an choice to separate all of the different activities, such as like industry, PV, ratting, PvE, PvP, but the most lucrative or challenging or best ways to go up in the world is through multiple interacting with multiple of these systems at the same time.
Right. So in the same way that somebody can come in and kill you while you're ratting, do you agree, or do you think that things like rats on gates, for example, that's a good way that PvE is kind of encroaching upon PvP?
I'm not a fan of the current Rats on Gates implementation, especially because it was either like 2 days ago or something. I was watching a stream, and a Titan was on a gate,
Yeah, that
and
can happen.
yeah, that can and does happen. Or you can have officers on gates, or you can have rats that scram you on gates, and so like I don't like how they kind of like sit on the gates and are dumb. They're not diamond rats, and you can't have good faction standing with them.
Right. I see. Yeah, I've been of the
Like
opinion that
if they were diamond rats and I could be aligned with the Blood Raiders, for instance, and fly around Blood Raider space and have a little bit of protection by like declaring my allegiance that way, then that would probably be fine.
right. So it sounds like you would agree with my position, which is that like the idea of gate rats is actually not bad. I like the idea of like this immersive game where like the NPCs defend their own space. They're interested in gate camping too. But the problem really is that this was an accident, right? Like things that were never designed for this implementation were brought here, and that's causing problems. If there's going to be rats on a gate,
Right.
it should be designed with that in mind rather than taking belt rats and just putting them on gates. Does that sound fair?
Yeah. Yeah. Because
But
a
you would advocate for something along those lines where PVE, like the NPCs are a living universe, and that means that they can interfere with you.
yes.
Okay.
I feel like given a hard choice of gate rats on or gate rats or not gate rats, I would have to say not gate rats, because then they could also spend that time on other things. And I don't
Hmm.
necessarily think that like you should be quite so interfered with. Like, does is there anyone that actually enjoys dealing with gate rats like on a at all? Like, are they anything more than just a fucking nuisance?
I've never heard anybody say anything positive about them, and I've hunted for
Yeah.
them. Um, I think mine is the strongest pro gate rat position, and it still is saying that like what they're doing with it is probably making things worse than better. Um, okay, so what's the state of exploration in Eve Online, and what do they need? What's missing in exploration?
Exploration is quite honestly in a fairly good state in that it is very easily able to get into by very new players, and they can make quite a bit of ISK, but there is not a good top end for exploration. If I really go head desk in the right place with the right allegiances, I can get probably about 350 million an hour consistently exploring.
That seems exceptionally good.
Or I could go C5 wormhole ratting and make like 2 to 3 times that.
Wait, so a billion an hour doing? Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, sure, but should exploration have the same income potential as some of the like hardest ratting with the most expensive ships? Hardest ratting might be a stretch.
I
People would
mean,
argue with that, but
if
you know what I mean.
if there's some kind of, I mean, not necessarily, but like also yes, like I feel like it should be expanded to some top end content with top end ships. It doesn't exist currently,
Well,
and I don't think you should be able to do it in like a Heron or whatnot. But our current like top end exploration is just combat.
right.
It is getting in a Marauder, and even though you're doing a data site, it's not a fucking data site. It's a dread site, in fact.
What about sleeper caches?
Okay,
Well, I mean,
I
like,
think
does
they're
that classify
buggy
as
as
like a
hell, but fairly good, and also not top end enough. You can do an entire superior sleeper cache in an Estero. Even the last room. It's very difficult, but you
right?
can do it.
Well, but the thing is that if it's not about combat, then like that's going to be true, right? Because it's about execution more than the number capabilities of your ship. Because if you need a big powerful ship, that kind of implies combat, right?
Possibly. Or you could have a very expensive ship with better bonuses for harder hacking. Or
That's
you could
fair.
have larger boards, or you could have multiple boards.
Okay. One of the things that
Like I don't have a particular answer for this
yeah.
question.
Well,
I'm just saying
yeah.
you asked me about exploration, and I feel like it's a very good new bro activity, but there's a point where you just outgrow it, and it's no longer really viable for ISK making.
Right. And I didn't expect you to like have like the best answer right ready prepared. The whole point of this is to explore how you think about problems and how you deal with
Hmm.
these kinds of questions, because that's the kind of question that you're going to have to deal with, or the kind of discussions that they have as the CSM, right? Especially since you are known as the exploration guy, I assume that like if you did get on the
Yeah, I
CSM,
mean
the
it
very
is the
first thing
most
that they would
favorite
ask
thing.
is like, so how's exploration, right? Um,
Right.
so the other day I was talking with
I feel
somebody.
like the new exploration sites that quote unquote new at this point were not great. Um, in fact, they were all fairly bad. There was the one in Pochfin, which was actually just a salvaging exploration site. So you didn't need to. I mean, it kind of expands like what quote unquote exploration is, and I would rather salvaging be involved than combat be involved.
What made
As a
them
side
bad?
note, I think the entire salvaging like mechanics and whatnot should be changed into its own little mini game. What made them bad was they were convoluted. They give shit loot, and the last two needed large combat ships. They weren't actually like exploration sites, and they were only in Lowsec. Which, if you don't live in Lowsec, you're not going to bring a Marauder into Lowsec.
Right. Although I suspect that that's why, I mean, like CCP is trying to see whether or not they can lure people into doing that kind of thing, right?
I mean, a little bit, but only fools would do that. Like, so the problem with Lowsec, in my opinion, currently, is that in order to actually live in Lowsec, you have to be like a nullsec adjacent group because of capital production and projection into Lowsec.
Do you think that capitals and super capitals power in low sec should be brought down?
Yes.
Do you think that super capitals should be banned from low sec?
Super caps, yeah. I would have no problem with that.
What about low sec groups like faction warfare groups that would want to use Titans for bridging?
Get rid of it.
Okay, that's pretty
You can find other ways.
that's pretty baller based. Uh, shoot, I had something.
I shouldn't have to have a nullsec group produce ships that are required to live in lowsec.
I agree.
I think you should be able to build dreads and operate dreads as the like basically highest thing in lowsec territories.
So, what one of the things I was talking to somebody about the other day was the event sites, right? That on the one hand they're kind of cookie cutter because the combat, even though the combat gets mixed up, ultimately you go into the room, you kill everything. If there's a second room, you go into the second room, you kill everything. Boss shows up, you kill boss, you get loot, right? Like I basically described the broad strokes of almost every combat site and events. Meanwhile, every hacking site is basically go there, there's cans, use it, right? Would you
Yeah.
what would you say to the idea of, like, let's look at the hunt, for example. In the hunt, you had the outside room. You had the first gate that led into the outside room where there's combat, and then there's an inside room with the boss and a bunch of towers. What would you think about, rather than having like the hacking sites as a separate scan down site, instead having the cans to hack be inside of the inner sanctum of the combat site, such that you now, like, it would encourage people to work together? The explorer actually needs to find somebody or be able to clear the site themselves in order to get to the can.
So I think it's a fine idea. I would want it to be a third kind of site, like a dual combat hacking. Because again, I think you should be able to just do hacking, or you should be able to just do combat.
Well, you'd be able to just do combat for sure, right? The idea is, like, everything in the combat site is still there. So they're like, you still clear the boss, you do all the combat stuff. It's just there are now 3 bonus cans in that final room that if you have the equipment to do that,
But
you can also get that bonus loot.
so, like, even if it is the same, the fact that people know that there are these cans, and it doesn't matter if they would have gotten them if they weren't there, or, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, they're going to feel like they are missing out on stuff.
Right, which kind of brings me back to that question of, like, challenging people versus a barrier to entry. Wouldn't that incentivize people to solve that problem? Like, yeah, you're
Yeah,
leaving
but
you're
also,
leaving
like,
potential on the table. So find somebody to help you to hack it, or, bring hacking equipment and refit.
yeah, and I imagine people would just bring hacking equipment and refit.
Sure, maybe, depending on how you play it out. But you get what I'm saying, right? Like, what is inherently wrong with it feeling bad that you're not able to actually get everything out of the site because you're not, cooperating with other people? That you could do it, but if you had more people with more specialties, you could get more out of it.
Um, People play games for fun.
Sure.
And I don't. So it kind of goes back to, I don't think that Eve should necessarily be a very hardcore game, especially in content that is designed for everyone to participate in.
So what do you believe is the best method to lure people to go deeper?
Deeper in what way?
Like, to commit further. Like, what spurs somebody to want to then go to nullsec, or take on level 4 missions instead of level 3 missions, or go learn how to do sleeper sites? You get what I'm saying? Like, if everything's designed to be comfortable where you are, what spurs people to go further? How do we incentivize people, or how do we get people to go further?
Why do we need people to go further? Why does someone need to know how to hack and do combat and do this other stuff when they are happy just doing PI and mining?
I would argue that it is very, like, players will defeat themselves, right? So if there's nothing that incentivizes you to do the more exciting thing, then you're going to do it the boring way, and then you're going to get bored, and then you're not going to, like, you're going to blame the game and quit.
Well, I mean, there should be incentives for
Right.
doing harder things, but that doesn't really motivate everyone. Like, you need to find different ways to motivate different kinds of players. Like, you and I like hardcore challenges. We like to do things, we like to beat our heads against the wall until the wall falls down. But that's not everybody. Some people like to do the achievements. Like, some people might be motivated when they see you get 10 points on your achievement track when you do level 4 missions. Or some people might see, if you do one of these dual, like, combat hacky thingies, you get a special decal on your ship.
So rewards and achievements would be the thing that gets people to go further.
Right. You need to find some way to incentivize people to do further things.
Right. Okay.
that they want, you know.
Yeah. I just like people. My concern is, especially with so few signposting in the game, like people won't even know that there is a deeper level unless they're, drawn into it.
Right.
But on the subject of like players defeating their own game, or like players not knowing how to play the game in the most fun way possible, or as the developer Sid Meier's Civilization said, given the opportunity, players will optimize the fun out of their own game, right? So, XCOM is a turn-based strategy where it has permadeath, and so players of the game were incentivized to be incredibly cautious, right? They would
Yep.
stand by and they would fortify and they would overwatch and let the aliens come to them so that way they could, kill them. Well, the problem is that while that's very effective, it isn't as fun as the more exciting way of doing it, right? So then for XCOM 2, what they did was they put timers on levels, or they put objectives that you literally had to commit deeper to force people to play in a much more aggressive way. Now, if you just saw that on paper, you'd be like, I don't want to have to play an aggressive way. I want to be able to use any strategy I want. But the people that do play it, agree for the most part that like that's still the objectively better way to playing. Like that's the more fun way to play. So, like, do you think that Eve has instances like that where the player will set up a worse version of the game for themselves and therefore need to be spurred towards a much more entertaining way of playing the game?
I feel so that's a difficult question because Eve is so large.
Right.
Like, it makes sense in the world of XCOM because you generally have a particular kind of player playing XCOM. Whereas with Eve, you have a lot of different kinds of players.
Absolutely. I was just using it as an example.
I feel like is probably certainly situations where people get into a situation which is quite possibly not very fun because they don't know any better.
Right.
And so there should be ways of getting them to try out to get involved in these other possibly fun things. And that can be through events. And it can be through it's not a bad idea to have event sites that like the best event sites having different gameplay aspects such as like combat and exploration.
Right. So let's take this from the other direction then. Let's say that they give special rewards, but you have to take part in faction warfare. What would you say to the people that say, I don't want to be forced to play faction warfare. I don't like the fact that there are special rewards that you can only get by doing faction warfare. I should be able to do, that feels like I'm being forced to do it. What would you say to those people?
Tough titties.
So, right. Okay. So then that's my question. It's like, where is the line, right? Where is the line between people feeling like they're forced to do something, people having to do things that might be out of their comfort zone or whatever, versus not? Do you think is it the difference between consequence versus reward, or like is it ISK versus cosmetic? Like what is causing what actually causes the difference in your mind?
So I think there should be very few things that are only achievable by certain ways of playing the game. And the things that are should be more or less meaningless. So, like, if you have to do faction warfare, you have to unlock this achievement in faction warfare only. You should get something, right? Because that's your style of gameplay. But it shouldn't be something that is very valued by other gameplay styles.
Right. Well, let's look at Black Glass. I'm also short on time, so we're going to enter into your 10 minutes as soon as this question. But
Okay. I don't
okay.
have much to say in 10 minutes.
So, Black Glass, right? Black Glass is based on hacking, based on exploration. It takes a bunch of exploration or wandering around and doing that kind of stuff in order to get it. But at the same time, it's pretty dangerous to get at least one of the pieces, and you can just buy it on the market. And it's pretty cheap on the market because there are a few people that control areas of space in Lowsec, and so they're able to just like farm that piece and just build a bunch of them and sell them on the market. Do you feel like that cheapens the entire treasure hunt aspect of Black Glass? Do you think that there should be like would you advocate for or against Black Glass being made into a quote unquote bind on pickup kind of thing where you have to go through the process of earning your Black Glass and building your Black Glass in order to have it? Or would you resist against that if it was suggested?
I think in the current implementation of Black Glass, an implant, which you can lose, I feel that it wouldn't be very viable to have to do it yourself, especially with the Lowsec component. But if you could instead have your character permanently augmented with this Black Glass ability by completing this quest line, then I think that would be better. Also, the fact that there was a real problem with the Lowsec component of that Black Glass quest,
Right.
with the people that lived in the Lowsec area, basically having a monopoly over the entire market. That problem has been fairly alleviated through the efforts of the Fart Fleet, which is an NPSI fleet ran by Urschlag and one crazy monkey on the weekends. So they'll get a big group of people to all farm that one specific component, and I think they might do the other components as well.
But isn't that a symptom of the problem? Like, if the
Yeah.
end result wasn't sellable, then people wouldn't fight to control it and farm it.
Possibly. I still think that if a group could basically have a constant stream of explorers who don't particularly know what they're doing because they haven't completed this quest line yet, going into their area, I feel like it would still be shooting fish in a barrel. Especially because you have to use the Entosis link in that particular area. I think the whole implementation of that area is not great.
I mean, I'm not saying that people wouldn't camp it, but they would be not as like right now they're literally incentivized to, right? Because it's not only a way to kill
Right.
people, but it's also a way to maintain your monopoly on what you do to make money off the market.
Right.
Okay, so but is there anything that you wanted to cover? Make sure that we go over before we wrap things up.
Not that I can think of currently.
Fair enough.
What?
So, are you talking to somebody in the real life, or?
No.
Oh, okay. You just turned and said something like I thought there was somebody else in the room with you.
Oh, sorry. No, I'm reading some information.
Got it. What is something? What do you think that CCP should keep the most forefront of their mind as they implement the faction warfare changes, the allegiance, like this huge change in how Eve works and the implementation of the living universe? What do you think is like the thing that they should like put as their number one, design goals or consideration? Or maybe not even number one. But what do you think that you like? What would you advocate for? What is your?
I would say long-term stability, because after the faction warfare changes come, it's very likely we won't be able to see any real changes to the system for another decade. So we need to have it work and work well for a long time. Even if it means it doesn't work particularly well in the beginning, like maybe it takes a year or two to actually like steady out and actually become good, I think that would be a fine compromise.
Fair enough. All right. Well, what I have left is the most important question of all, which is cat ears, yes or no?
I think this is obvious. You should do an achievement to get your cat ears, and then you can wear them.
What would that achievement be? Like, what would you do to
It
get that
would
achievement?
be, I don't know. but it would be some kind of fun quest that involves gathering Fetos and other particular fun items in the Eve universe, and you would eventually go back to some like Galente Prime or whatnot, and return it for some fun Galente cat ears.
That's pretty awesome. I lied. What do you think is the best change that CCP has made since you've been or while you've been playing? What is the thing that's like, man, this was the stroke of pure genius?
Can I say nothing?
Yeah, I mean, not just in the last couple of years, but I mean, like ever. Like, what is like? Has anything ever stood out to you as being like, man, they nailed it?
Probably the introduction of wormholes.
Ah, it's a good answer.
I think it added a lot of connectivity and intrigue to the world of New Eden. So that's what I'm going with.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your time, and I think that to kind of summarize my thoughts about this, obviously, if people want to learn more about you, they can watch your streams, they can watch your YouTube videos. A lot of your positions and your feelings about things are publicly available for people. What I really wanted to do today was show how you discuss things. And I think that you demonstrate a calmness to the way that you engage, but firmness. You know what you know, right? You don't have to get excited about it. You don't have to get mad about it. You just know what you know. And I think that the CSM might need that. You know what I mean? Like, there's a certain amount, like knowing, like, there's going to be all these subject matter experts or whatever, but having somebody who understands and has worked with CCP a lot on a lot of different ways as a partner, but have dealt with both, disappointment and excitement from CCP. I think that you could navigate being on the CSM pretty well in that regard. Do you have any plans on using your stream to kind of bring the CSM to the people if you get elected?
I mean, most certainly, right? Like, obviously, I'll still be streaming and YouTubing and whatnot, and there'll be people asking questions about various topics, and I'm more than willing to be open and honest about all of that experiences, NDA permitting. But yeah, I feel like I'm a candidate for the people by the people.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And
I feel like I'm in the public eye. It's not a very long stretch to go from where I am currently to the CSM.
right. And I think that like it could risk feeling like that argument is like a weaker one because it's like where's your base or whatever, or a worry would be that you wouldn't like without having a strong voting block behind you. It's a huge row to hoe, right? And so the big worry when it comes to there are fantastic candidates out there that you should absolutely vote for. And if you do, that vote will be relatively wasted or it'll go on to the next one because there's no way that those people are going to hit critical mass to survive. Mm-hmm. However, whatever you think about streamers or, whatever, running for CSM, the God honest truth is that voting is a popularity contest. And so here we have a non-block candidate that actually could have momentum behind him. And therefore, you joining that momentum could be effective. And we could get that kind of voice where a different person, maybe they'll get eliminated before they could even make it past the threshold.
Yeah. And I mean, that would be great. I will say, I understand that me getting on the CSM this year is an incredibly long shot. And I think that if you want a wormhole candidate, you should definitely put Mark Resurrectus above me on your ticket. If you You should also probably put Arcia above me on your ticket because I want her on the CSM.
That's
She's
fair.
going on the top of mine, and it's like there are a lot of great candidates. And last year, at the start of the CSM, none of my ticket was on the CSM. Eventually,
Oh,
Arcia got on,
yeah.
but like I understand, like we need good representation, and I'd be honored if you vote for me if you're number one on your ticket. But also, I understand that like the way the voting system works, it's crucial that we put those names higher on the ticket for the ones that might that are kind of like on the cusp of being able to get in. So
Right.
they're not quite like block candidates, but they're also not like complete outliers.
Although on the other hand, people like Arcia will almost certainly get enough one votes to survive past the first few phases, and so
Yeah,
putting
I
her
think
as your number
Arcee's
two
got great
vote,
chances.
like you could get Nth Dimensional elected, and then the roll off votes could go to Arcia. Who knows? But I do
Yeah,
have
yeah,
actually one more question,
definitely.
and I feel almost bad about uh, ending it with this kind of thing, but so I do want to make sure it gets addressed. You know, you were you were streaming a lot, making YouTube a lot, all that kind of stuff. But then you kind of vanished for a little while, and then you showed up just
Yeah.
in time to run for the CSM. Can you give us any assurance that like this isn't some just like opportunism, that you're actually committed to doing this?
So I wouldn't say that I disappeared during that time. I would say that I was more focused on other aspects of life, including acquiring money. So I was streaming a whole lot previously and doing a whole lot of content creation through a large push of making it more sustainable. It is obviously incredibly difficult and hard, and so I did need to focus on acquiring wealth through other means, as well as other life stuff going on, including FenFest. Now that FenFest is over, now that money generation is a little more stable, like there will be peaks and valleys. I've never left. I've continued playing Eve basically every day. I'm almost always in Twitch streams.
Well, I assume that you're not going to stop making content. So how are you going to
Right.
juggle the CSM on top of that?
Like I'll be real. Like I said in the CCP interview, that on long CSM or when the CSM is honestly going to come first,
I
it's
see.
probably most important.
So when you need to,
And
you'll
so
pause your
when the
content creation.
CSM, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Awesome.
Yeah,
So you're prepared to, you know, do that when you can, but this year would be
yeah.
CSM
So
first.
at the end of the day, especially my Twitch, my live streams is more fun entertainment and whatnot. And then it's probably like YouTube is like the educational stuff that I would kind of want to
Right.
focus on because it's more concise, gets a lot of good information out to a lot of people easily. And then like CSM to like actually make our game better.
Yeah. And to your credit, Art Gravy is in chat vouching for the fact that the rumors of you vanishing were greatly exaggerated.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
uh,
If you joined in PSI fleets, if you were flying in faction warfare, you saw me.
yeah,
Just because I
that's fair.
wasn't live on twitch.tv doesn't mean I wasn't here.
That's that's a good point. But thank you for at least addressing that point in the event. I like to ask these kinds of things of the candidates because I know that people in the audience might be thinking it. So might as well get your answer out there. So I appreciate you tackling that, and I do apologize that that came at the very end after the cat ear question or anything. That feels like an ambush.
No, it's
But
fine.
uh,
And I do foresee I will be able to stream and make more YouTube content more regularly now.
excellent. I look forward to it. Thank you for coming and hanging out and talking and running for the CSM. It is a big ask, and I think that everybody who does that should be commended for it, especially since someone like you takes it seriously, because you already are out there. You've got a lot, you've got a whole reputation to uphold in all of this. So it means a lot to see you step up and want to take it to the next level, especially without it being like a big block or, null focus. You know what I mean? Like the traditional stuff. Like, I think that's the kind of voice that we need. And you're the kind of
we're
person
gonna get
that
our
need.
null blocks for sure. That hopefully I can represent the more solo-ish player. I mean, I don't play solo, but like smaller group focused.
Right. All right. Well, thank you all also for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. All them good algorithmic things. Before you go, ask any questions that you have for Nth down below in the doobly-doo. Down below in the comments, or use the link in the doobly-doo to go to his forum post and post them there, or just go to his stream or YouTube channel, or you have a Discord, right? But you can get to from your stream.
Yeah. So technically, I have a Discord. I basically never use it.
Fair enough. Don't use the Discord.
I'll obviously
use my YouTube.
I'll watch the Astronaut the YouTube and comment and respond to all the comments there.
Excellent. Well, but thank you guys for watching it. If you've made it this far, it is really important. All these candidates are taking it seriously. I take it seriously, so thank you very much for taking it seriously as well. The CSM is very important. It is a very valuable tool, but it's only as good as we make it. And the way that we make it good is by having an informed and active electorate. So I look forward to participating with the rest of you guys in voting starting on the 7th. And hopefully we'll have a bang-up CSM this year, and perhaps, hopefully, a Scott Renton on it. But
the dream.
Until next time.
We'll have a great CSM, regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. But on behalf of Nth Dimensional and myself, Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden, thank you all for watching. And until next time, we'll see you in space. But you might not see him.